Hello and welcome to the Banker's View from Swift Latin American Regional Conference. I'm Silvia Pavoni, Economics Editor of The Banker, and I'm now with Irene Arias Hofman, who is the CEO of IDB Lab, part, of course, of the Inter-American Development Bank. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Silvia.
We've just finished the panel discussion where we discussed innovation, how companies can introduce innovation, innovative ways of working, and ways that they can really come up with fresh new ideas and bring them to life, which is exactly what the IDB Lab tries to do. So can you tell me a little bit about recent initiatives that you've undertaken and your assessment of the innovative and fintech environments in Latin America?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, Silvia. And yes, IDB Lab, previously the Multilateral Investment Fund, is the innovation laboratory of the Inter-American Development Bank. So we are dedicated to innovating for a more inclusive region. And in that sense, our definition of innovation is exactly as you put it, is finding new ways of solving problems and enabling, creating an environment where we can experiment, we can test new models, new ways of tackling those challenges that the region still faces, and that can help us create a more inclusive region. We have financing, knowledge, and connections as products through which we can make that happen. Most of all, we try to create a place where we can fail, learn, we can test, we can iterate, and that's wonderful because for a multilateral to have that space within it that can also then leverage the fact of being part of the IDB group. So things can scale through either the public side that IDB works with or the private corporate sector and the banks that IDB Invest, the private arm, works with, creates, I think, a very, very potentially good combination to really generate impact.
One of the questions that we had from the audience was about how do you make sure that innovation goes towards technology and new solutions that help sustainable development. So I would imagine that being part of the IDB, that must be one of the key components of your assessment process. Is that right?
Yes, it's a fundamental criteria. So when we look at new ideas, we measure innovation as well as impact and scalability. And that means that we do not pursue technology for the sake of technology. We want to look at and really understand deeply the problem that we're trying to solve, convening all the key stakeholders, including those that are going to be critical for the scalability of the potential solution. Then do a search of what are the main and the best global solutions to that problem, and get into the prototyping and then the piloting to scale. So from the get-go, having that clear criteria of innovation, impact, and scalability is very important.
And that was one of the points that have been raised really over the past day and a half, the one of the risk of becoming enamored with a specific technology, with the solution looking for a problem, essentially. So that's something that perhaps everyone is more aware of, the potential risk that this may bring. You mentioned scalability, which in Latin America, of course, is an issue because we have great examples of wonderful disruptors and financial innovators from across the world. Unfinancial, perhaps the most obvious and extraordinary example of this. Unfinancial, though, of course, comes from a market, China, that is substantially larger than the whole of the Latin American region. So is scale an issue, and what can be done to create corridors, perhaps, to make sure the solutions become cross-border solutions?
Well, I think the region is actually at the critical point in time in terms of creating more possibilities for scalability. We see more than ever companies that are becoming regional, companies that think internationally and globally from the beginning, companies that among the 17, now 18 since yesterday, unicorns in Latin America are no longer just from the major hubs, but come from other parts of the region. So things are changing. I think we are in a very, very interesting moment, but it's still, compared to Asia and other markets, Latin America is still catching up. part of the answer to how that can happen, I think, is collaborating across academia, government, private sector investors, startups, and creating that environment where those solutions can be developed. So you allow that innovation to happen. You don't freeze it through regulation that would tamper those good ideas from even emerging. But then you quickly create a responsible framework for that to happen. And in parallel, you also work on the basic building blocks for things to spread also in an equitable way. And that means, for example, investing in basic telecom infrastructure and connectivity for everyone.
That's wonderful. Thank you again so much for your comments, Irene.
You're welcome. Thank you, Silvia.